The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie. Yeah, we're gonna be a movie.
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie. We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody.
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
And we are going to start right here. Hello, and welcome to Triple Feature, a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me tonight is one of my many hetero life mate partners in crime. He's Sean. You're not. How you doing, Sean?
I'll let you think a moment on which part of that description you messed up a little bit. We're back, baby.
Yes, sir.
We're back and taking a little bit of a step out of our usual wheelhouse with this one.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking about that as we were starting the show about I've been saying this. The theme of this whole year, of the year of our Lord 2023, is I don't want to talk about stuff I don't want to talk about anymore. But I would like to use the platform of which I've been given, of which people have told me I'm fairly good at, to watch things that I'm curious about, talk about things that are interesting to me, and not really worry about the muck and mire. Is this something that people want to hear us talk about? Because I can never tell. I was actually having that conversation with Jesse. Mm-hmm. I throw up a show, and it's like, well, this is what everyone's talking about right now. This Marvel thing, this Star Wars thing, or whatever. I'll talk about it too, and nobody cares. Let me talk about this other weirdo thing, because I'm passionate about it, and I don't care if anyone listens, and that's when everyone tunes in. You never know. So Wes Anderson has been one of those directors who, as much as that, and I've gone back and I've listened to like our Spun review and Donnie Darko, and you and I have definitely touched on a great deal of independent film and had long involved conversations about the pros and cons, the good and bad of independent film. When we talked about Spun, we had a very long, and I cut this for TikTok so I remember it. Been a very long conversation of, hey, just because it's independent doesn't mean it's good. And there's a lot of stuff that got thrown out there that you and I were just like, all right. This is sort of the cinematic version of Piss Christ. You stuck a crucifix in a jar of piss here and said it was art, which I'm not going to argue with you about it, but I don't have to like it either. And so Wes Anderson was always one of those directors who I just had zero interest in. And I never watched Rushmore, and I've heard Rushmore is fantastic, and now I've seen it in preparation for this. I heard Rushmore is fantastic. I've heard the Royal Tenenbaums was fantastic, and when anyone mentions Wes Anderson, those are the first two movies they talk about. They talk a little bit about maybe the hotel, the
Grand Budapest Hotel, the aquatic, Aquatic Life of Steve Zissou. Is that the name?
The Life Aquatic, something Steve Zissou.
The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Yeah, neither of which I've seen. There's a gap in my Wes Anderson viewing.
That's the first one I saw. So like I said, all my friends were like, have you seen Rushmore? No, I don't want to watch your gay Cowboys eating pudding movie. All right, have you seen the Royal Tenenbaums? See the first
Cowboys eating pudding movie. Wait. What did your buddies convince you Rushmore was about?
They didn't. So that's just my stupid way of saying it into your independent film. So they were like, okay, so you got to come. So you got to come see The Life Aquatic, and I did, and that was my first Wes Anderson movie. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what the hell is this? What's with the long pregnant pauses? What's with him having to list things in the first 20 minutes of the film? And I would come to find out that's the Wes Anderson style. Last year, Ronnie and this was a year or two ago, Ronnie and I reviewed The French Dispatch, because I had to take a fucking break from Wes Anderson. And then this year, and that's what prompted this triple feature, was he released a movie called Asteroid City, which got pretty good reviews, and I was interested in it. And I thought, okay, well, this is a great opportunity with this format to talk about Asteroid City, which may or may not need the whole 20 minutes, and then go back and look at these two movies that are critically acclaimed, fans love, and kind of define the Wes Anderson style. Before we talk about who exactly Wes Anderson is, tell me a little bit about your coming to Wes Anderson, or being like me, sort of running away from Wes Anderson with all your might.
Oh, I didn't run from him, but he was he's kind of one of those generationally important auteurs. One of the ones whose praises you hear sung everywhere. And yet he also fell into that camp of the mini generational auteurs that you never quite get around to really diving into. Woody Allen, I think, is kind of sort of the best comparison I could make.
Yeah, and I was reading his Wikipedia. Woody Allen is one of the places he draws inspiration from.
It bleeds off. It bleeds off every scene. Absolutely, it drips with Woody Allen influence. But, and the two are they're extremely understated. The wit is there, but it's dry. It's subtle. It's kind of refined. It's not a Sunday Garfield. It's a New Yorker strip.
Yeah.
If anything, is maybe the best way that I
very
can
accurate
kind of visually present it. But again, the whole point being, one of those directors for whom they're important because they're constantly referred to as being important. But it's hard to really kind of frame what makes them so appealing. And the thing about these movies that they really drive home about Wes is you kind of either love him or you're indifferent to him.
That's very accurate.
Yeah.
I don't think his style engenders hate. But it's very much like I watched this with my daughter and my wife, Asteroid City, Tuesday night, and we're recording this on a Thursday. And none of us were like, I dislike this movie. This movie actively upsets me. It was very much like, as my son would say, well, that was a thing that happened. Wes Anderson's movie, either they grab you, because I'll tell you what, in looking at these three pieces, Asteroid City, Rushmore, and Royal Tenenbaums, there's very much the early Wes Anderson. He definitely has a perspective. He has a point of view. He has something he wants to say, and he very much says it. I think with Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums, but he says it in a way that's very entertaining. These are outstanding movies. The Royal Tenenbaums of the three probably being my favorite. With Asteroid City, you ever go to a party or you're talking to people, to any group of people, and you come across this one person, and he's very excited to tell you a thing. There's a thing that he's very passionate about, and you couldn't give a fuck less. You're like, I'm glad this brings joy to your life and that makes you happy. But oh my God, if you talk about Metallica one more time in the box set that you got, I'm gonna stab my eyes with this little toothpick I got in my drink.
Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Hello, Taylor.
I have known those people. I have been that person.
Just almost autistic in that you're not getting that everyone is bored the shit by what you're saying, and just like we're happy for you, but please end the sentence with a period, not a comma.
You know what? If someone were to make the assumption that I was on the spectrum, and of course I preface this by saying I'm step parent to a fantastic autistic teenager. So don't come for me. Just don't bother. To be honest, if somebody were to make that assumption, I almost couldn't be mad about it. I would have to just kind of look at it and just, Fair.
So that's
I was the one who cornered you with the zero sugar Dr. Pepper cream soda and went off on a 35-minute thesis about why I think that Shawn Michaels versus Triple H Hell in a Cell doesn't get remotely the credit it deserves, even if it's not even the best match of their feud.
Yeah.
So I can't really blame you.
So that's Wes Anderson for me. Wes Anderson is this awkward, spectrum-y guy, very much wanting to tell you his thoughts on upper-class white people and his problems and his appreciations for them.
Oh, does he?
And Asteroid City is just like, I've recently gotten into aliens and like the whole Roswell aliens in the desert thing, and I must tell you about it for 2.5 excruciating hours. Okay,
but
Wes.
you can't. And yet you can't really be irritated at them about it because you can't help but admire their enthusiasm.
No, it's like when a child tells you something. When my son wants to tell me about a video game or an anime he's into, and I couldn't give a shit less, but it's my son and I love him, so he has my full attention. But he might as well be the teacher from Charlie Brown because all I'm hearing is wah wah wah. And so again, if you're in tune to the Wes Anderson experience, you're getting the Pink Floyd Laser Light Show. If you're me and you're not, this is not the language that I speak. This is not David Simon. David Simon speaks to me and I am in tune and I see color. Yeah. When Wes Anderson speaks to me, I hear Charlie Brown. But who is this? Go ahead, and then we'll get into it.
I was going to say good comparison because I remember it was a short ways into Rushmore when something initially.
I couldn't care less about rich white people. I kind of hate them. So like, I'm not the Wes Anderson.
No. But stick with me on this.
Yeah.
Is the fact that I've often said to you and to other people that I loathe the Big Bang Theory because it's nerd culture written by the kind of person who used to punch us in the dick and stuff us into lockers.
It's a valid criticism.
Yeah. This feels like a takedown of an uppity subculture by someone who's seen too much of it up close.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely like the rich film student who went to school to make movies about how much he hates his life.
Yeah, but he doesn't settle for just bombastic, over the top parody. This isn't Animal House.
Yeah, I was gonna say this isn't.
This is a
Idiocracy or something.
Yeah, this is a little more earthy and close to the nerve. Close to the nerve.
When
it comes to how he kind of surgically takes them apart.
Well, it's funny because, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but I will say this: like the Royal Tenenbaums is probably of the three is probably the best example of him appreciating and having sympathy for rich upper class white people and saying like they're not all 100% bad all the time. There's some problems with them, and I need to point those out. I have to scream at the mountaintops about the issues I have with these people, but they are people. And there's good in them. And life is not all that black and white. And he very much sees the gray, I feel, after watching this. And so there is some tenderness and care and appreciation, but also, boy, do these people need to be taken down a peg, which I can appreciate.
Oh yeah. Well, but he's also kind of merciful enough that, especially in Rushmore, he takes his protagonist down a peg.
Yeah.
So that he can humanize him as he resculpts him and builds him back up.
I have to say, like, for all of my whatever complaints I have about Wes Anderson, they're subjective, they're not objective. Because Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums are excellently written films. Like, they're some of the best films I've ever seen. They are tight scripts. But Asteroid City, not so much. All right, so who is this man, Wes Anderson? Well, he's an American filmmaker. His films are known for their eccentricity, unique visual and narrative styles, and frequent use of ensemble casts and the same fucking people. The Wes Anderson players, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman. Just goes on and on. They often contain themes of grief, loss of innocence, and dysfunctional families. Some critics cite Anderson as a modern-day example of an auteur, as Sean has pointed out. 3 of his films have appeared in the BBC Culture's 2016 poll, the greatest film since 2000. He gained acclaim for his early film Bottle Rocket and Rushmore, which we're going to talk about just Rushmore rather. He often collaborated with brothers Luke and Owen Wilson during that time and founded his production company, American Imperial Pictures, the hoidiest of hoity, which he runs. He received a nomination for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for the Royal Tenenbaums. His next films included The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, the Darjeeling Limited, and his first stop-motion film, Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Darjeeling Limited, yeah.
Yes, for which he received an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature nomination, and then Moonrise Kingdom, earning his second Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. For his film The Grand Budapest Hotel, he received his first Academy Award nomination for Best Director and Best Picture, and won the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, and a BAFTA for Best Original Screenplay. He then worked on The Isle of Dogs, for which he earned a Silver Bear for Best Director, and The French Dispatch, and now Asteroid City, which came out earlier this year. The visual style. Anderson has been noted for extensive use of flat space camera moves, symmetrical compositions, knolling, snap zooms, slow motion walking shots, a deliberately limited color palette, fucking is it ever, and handmade art direction, often utilizing miniatures. These stylistic choices give his movies a distinctive quality that has provoked much discussion and critical study, supercuts, mashups, and parody. Have you ever seen the we lost Sean for a minute? When he comes back, I got to talk to him about the Family Guy episode where they do the same story 3 different times by 3 different directors, and one of them is Wes Anderson, and fucking Family Guy nailed him dead to rights. It was really, really good. If you ever have an opportunity to see the Family Guy 3 directors episode, the Wes Anderson stuff is goddamn funny. As we wait for Sean to come, there he is. So I was talking about the Family Guy episode with the 3 directors, and one of them is Wes Anderson.
I have not seen that one.
Oh yeah, look it up when we're done here. Anyway,
okay.
So many writers, critics, and Anderson himself have commented that his gives his movies the feel of being self-contained worlds or scale model households. According to Jesse Fox Mayshark, his films have a Baroque pop bent that is not realist, surrealist, or magic realist, but rather be described as fabulist. In 2019, the company Murals Wallpaper launched a line of wallpapers inspired by the visual design of Anderson's films. Oh, that's hilarious. Anderson's work has been classified as postmodern on account of his nostalgic attention to detail, his subversion of mainstream conventions of narrative, his references to different genres in the same film, and his love of the eccentric characters for complex sexual identities. Anderson has mostly directed fast-paced comedies marked by more serious and melancholic themes, with themes often centered on, as we said before, grief and such. His movies have been noted as unusually character-driven and by turns both derided and praised with terms like literary geek chic. Their plots often feature thefts and unexpected disappearances with a tendency to borrow liberally from the caper genre. All right. So that's Wes Anderson. Anything else about him that you want to chat about before we get into Asteroid City?
Not really. Nothing I can think of just strictly about him. I think the rest is pretty much said by talking about the movies.
Yeah. Let me just one final point, and then I'll go right into Asteroid City after this. I think one of the things that sort of tries my patience with Wes Anderson, because it's one of those where we know your trick. I've seen this trick. Please come up with a different trick. I've watched 5 of his movies now. Okay. 3 of these, The French Dispatch and The Life Aquatic. If I have to sit through one more Wes Anderson movie where the first 20 minutes is him listing things, I'm going to punch a baby. I fucking had enough of that. Like, we get it, Wes. You love lists. Again, you're like an autistic child. You're like, here, let me list a bunch of I sit there and I watch these movies and I'm like, can we get to the fucking get to the rising action here? Nope. Let Wes has to sit you down, Alex from Clockwork Orange style, and read a list to you for the first 20 minutes of every one of his movies, and it drives me a little insane.
You know what, though? Again, that's another one of those things about him that kind of fascinates me. I won't call it necessarily a virtue, just something that I kind of find individually endearing, and that's because in terms of any creative avenue, I think it's interesting to take a look at the works and kind of find the little things set them apart. And that little thing can be something that's as repetitive as, I don't know, a J.J. Abrams lens flare.
Sure.
Or the fact that for his first 3 movies, Kevin Smith might as well have been physically allergic to a camera move. To, I don't know, the way I can hear something in a solo, the way a guitarist bends a string, and I'll be able to identify them immediately. Yeah. Or as Ann and I have been watching wrestling, I've been kind of pointing out that there's like the way Bret Hart takes a turnbuckle bump, or Jerry Lawler's punches, something like that. I just love the way they do just that one thing that I look for in any given match, and I feel like I'm probably the only one who's looking for it.
There's something to be said
I still enjoy it because it's them.
Yeah. It's something. Look, there's something to be said for distinctive style that defines one of your movies. I don't have to love it. It irritates me, Mark Radulich, but I get the value of it to other people. Yeah. So Asteroid City is the first movie we're going to talk about here. It's a 2023 American comedy drama film, written, directed, produced by Wes Anderson from a story he wrote with Roman Coppola. It features an ensemble cast including Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, speaking of lists, Tilda Swinton, Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Adrian Brody, Liev Schreiber, Hope Davis, Steve Park, Rupert Friend, Maya Hawke, Steve Carell, Matt Dillon, Hong Chow, Willem Dafoe, Margot Robbie, Tony Revolori, Jake Ryan, and Jeff Goldblum. It's a metatextual plot, simultaneously depicts the events of a junior Stargazer convention and a retro-futuristic version of 1955, staged as a play, and the creation of the play. It is Anderson's homage to popular memory and mythology about extraterrestrials and UFOs witnessed in the southwestern desert in close proximity to atomic test sites during the post-war period of the American 20th century. So like I said, I watched this movie the other night, and it was a movie that happened in front of me. God is my witness. In a hostage situation, if I was told to recall details and plots about this movie, I couldn't do it. I watched, I saw, I laughed at times. I enjoyed my daughter's reaction. She, having never seen a Wes Anderson movie, this 12-year-old had a bunch of what the fuck moments. I watched as my wife turned into a glazed donut, as this is not really her thing. She's more of the Step Brothers type than she is the Wes Anderson type. But that being said, I mean, it was like, okay, this is, we say Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino takes on the Western. Quentin Tarantino takes on the golden age of Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino takes on exploitation movies. Quentin Tarantino takes on blaxploitation. Quentin Tarantino takes on the crime noir. Okay, Wes Anderson takes on extraterrestrials in a desert. Right, great, thanks. It's 2 hours. How long was this? This was almost 2 hours of my life that I was like, all right, well, I'm happy to be home watching this with my family, and that's all I got. Sean?
Remember what I said about love him or indifferent?
Yeah.
This is my indifferent.
Yeah, this is. You ever get like just a lazy lap dance where you're like, I'm happy to be here. This is fine, but I'm not really getting what I'm never really getting what I should out of the lap dance experience. I'm just sort of existing, and this isn't bad, but this isn't great.
I could think back to a few. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the indifferent lap dance of cinema.
Yeah. I feel like with the different more colorful motif and the stylization, like they knew it was like, maybe they knew it was a boring lap dance, and so they at least tried to set it to like Goofy Goober Rock or Alice's Restaurant.
I was going to say, I'm going to give you this really laxity of the restaurant, but it's going to be done by the Banana Splits theme. La 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 la. Tra
Shout
la
out to me
la.
first in the Gimme Gimmes.
Tra la la la.
La 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 la
Yeah.
la 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 la.
you're not wrong. The color paletting is, I would say, like the cinematography. It's funny. We've been doing film study and film conversation since 2011, 2014, somewhere. I don't remember when we started doing Long Road to Ruin, but it was almost a decade ago. And we often talk about characters and we talk about plots and we talk about special effects. I think sometimes we all, as film people, forget that, and I say this all the time, but I say it all the time because it gets forgotten a lot. Film is a visual medium. There is an element of film that can be painting brought to life. And one of the things about Wes Anderson, if the plot's not grabbing you, if the performance doesn't grab you because it's very dry and static and almost monotone, then at least most of his movies are very interesting to look at. I don't know if I would necessarily call them pretty. And I don't think Asteroid City is a pretty movie as such as it is. I've been to art museums. I've been to the Natural History Museum. I've been to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I've been to the Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. And I will look at a painting and I wouldn't necessarily call it pretty or beautiful, but it is remarkable. And, its use of color, its use of shape, it's remarkable. It captures my attention. And I would say that's Asteroid City in terms of cinematography and set design, is that it's not pretty. It's not, it is remarkable. It is interesting. It definitely drew me in, and it's the star of this movie, in my opinion. When I looked at this movie, it was probably, and somebody said, at gunpoint, tell me about Asteroid City. I was like, okay, the use of color is what stood out most to me in a positive way.
Yeah. Was it just me, or despite the fact that Asteroid City was the more colorful, the more vibrant, Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums were actually the more enjoyable to the eyes?
Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums overall felt more like movies than Asteroid City does. Asteroid City,
maybe that was it.
Yeah, like the Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore felt like they were supposed to be entertaining, whereas Asteroid City just feels like Wes Anderson's fucking like college film project. Where I get that he's passionate about this subject, and I get that his style and the way that he presented it was meaningful to him. But but unless you were the hoidiest of toity film people, or you just really love fucking Wes Anderson, or you're trying too hard, or one of the three, or a combination of those three, I'm not entirely sure what was supposed to be appealing about Asteroid City. Sean's having problems with his equipment today. So I can sort of vamp here. So the critical, first of all, Sean's back.
Yep.
Right, so
I apologize. The lag is worse than usual today. I've turned my camera definition down and everything.
Okay. So why don't you give me your kind of 50 words or less here in Asteroid City and move on, because I have a sneaky suspicion we've sort of run out of runway here.
We really have. We really had way too much fun just talking about Wes. I mean, you really said it best. It felt like Wes was trying to kind of experiment with something that was going to kind of shake him up, keep him from maybe feeling a little bit stale or complacent. And bravo. I mean, A for effort, but it just wasn't as enjoyable to watch, despite having the usual, pretty sharp, enjoyable cast.
Yep.
I felt like I was just high enough while watching it. But I wasn't quite to the point where I was able to weave together something that I was supposed to take away like I was with our other two movies.
All right. On a budget of $25 million, it made double that. It made about $50 million, so it wasn't a complete loss here. It was nominated for a Palme d'Or. It did not win. It's been nominated for 3 different Hollywood Critics Film Mid-Season Film Awards. So it'll probably get some Golden Globes and some Oscar nominations come that time. The Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 75% with 338 critics. Asteroid City is unlikely to win Wes Anderson many new converts, but those who respond to his signature style will find its return to immaculately arranged form. Metacritic gave it a 74 out of 100. Cinema Score gave it a B on an A to F, and Post Track gave it a 78%. I just want to read this really quick, and then we can move on. The Guardian, Peter Bradshaw, called Asteroid City terrifically entertaining and lightly sophisticated, and wrote, "The movie rattles cleverly and exhilarating along, adroitly absorbing the implications of pathos and loneliness without allowing itself to slow down. It is tempting to consider this savant blankness as some kind of symptom, but I really don't think so. It is the expression of style." Sean, that's really the last note on this that I think is worth playing, is that I've often criticized certain directors for having way too much of a blank canvas to paint on, and not enough adults in the room, not enough collaboration to sort of limit any one creator's worst impulses. Mm-hmm. And if, when I think about Rushmore and I think about the Royal Tenenbaums, because they feel like more complete films, there was also probably a lot more collaboration, a lot more people in the room going, "No, Wes, you can't do that." And now because Wes won Oscars, Wes is well known, Wes kind of gets a blank check to go. Like, nobody gives Wes a check and goes, "Go make me Star Wars." That's not what Wes does. No. They go, here's a modest sum of money. Go make your fancy art picture, you fancy art director, and go win us some awards. Hopefully this makes $1, but we're not worried about that. Go make your fancy prestige film. And because nobody is watching him, he just sort of does what was in my edibles fever dream induced fucking coma last night that I can now put on film. And everyone's just going, well, everything else he does is fine, so I'm sure this will work just fine too. And it's not like he has to. It's not Indiana Jones. It's not like he has to make $1 billion. So fuck it. But I think, and I've had this criticism about Lucas, and I've had this criticism about some others, they suffer from a lack of collaboration and editing, and a style only gets you so far. That's my final word on Asteroid City. If this is an ode to style, then you have made a very distinct but a very lonely movie.
Yeah, you can have style, and among some that's going to count for a lot. But the fact is, it can also very detrimentally affect how enjoyable it is to consume, and hence how many people it's going to reach. Yeah. So that's the tightrope that you have to walk in any creative endeavor, and I feel like that's becoming an underlying theme of this particular episode. Is that notion of expression and enjoyability and how the two balance out. You just said in every medium. And again, this is what I'm talking about. It's common to every medium. Mm-hmm. You're going to have people who are going to have to sometimes just be told no. On wrestling podcasts, we make the reference about Vince Russo 1,000 times. He was one of the WWF's creative masterminds in the 90s, one of the framers of the unprecedented Attitude Era. But again, as it's become abundantly apparent, that was because he had someone to filter the wheat from the chaff. Right. In gaming, I've talked often with Anne. We're both big Final Fantasy fans. But we talk about how sometimes Tetsuya Nomura gets so bogged down in his 1,000,001 ideas that someone just needs to tell the man no and just finish the fucking game he's working on. Yeah. Just stop lining up your next 12 projects and just focus on this one.
Yeah, and some expressions of creativity are a little up their own ass. Go ahead, Sean. You're okay, Sean. Go ahead.
You froze.
One of us is frozen, but go ahead and you can go ahead and finish your point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say the end of my point was just that I think it really stands to reason that on this one, some filter was missing.
Yeah.
Wes needed to be on maybe a little bit shorter leash at some point.
Yeah, agreed. All right. We have some folks watching on Twitch and our Radulich and Broadcasting Facebook page. We appreciate our live audience as always. And if you do have a comment, like I just did for Robert's brother, I'll go ahead and put you on screen. Let's move on to the more enjoyable two movies of this trio. Rushmore. So Rushmore is a 1998 film directed by Wes Anderson about a teenager named Max Fisher, who's played by Jason Schwartzman in his film debut, and his friendship with rich industrialist Bill Murray, who is the character Herman Bloom, and their shared affection for elementary school teacher Rosemary Cross, who's played by Olivia Williams. The film was co-written by Anderson and Owen Wilson, and the soundtrack multiple songs by bands associated with the British invasion of the 1960s. Filming began in November of 1997 around Houston, Texas, and lasted 50 days until 1998. It had a budget of $10 million. On the upside, made about twice that much. It has become it's won a bunch of awards or not been nominated for awards. It's on Bravo's. It's number 34 on Bravo's 100 funniest movies. It's it's a cult classic. It made Entertainment Weekly's The Cult 25 since 1983. It's on the top 10 of their 25 modern romance. Spin hailed it as the best comedy of the year. So, and in 2016, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So, thank you. Thank you, Robert's brother. My Schwartzman is bigger than yours. May the Schwartzman be with you. All right, so the sum total of this movie is such. We have a ne'er-do-well student named Max Fisherman, and he's either founded or a part of a lot of clubs. That is our
clubs.
That is the ECW opening medley of this movie. That is the Wes Anderson infamous list of shit that happens. He's in all these clubs, but he's not really into doing his schoolwork. And he is perpetually on the verge of being thrown out of this school. He lies and says that his father's a neurosurgeon when he is just a barber. Rushmore and being a part of all of these clubs and being interwoven in the fabric of this school is his whole life, and it is being threatened. And then along comes this teacher, and he falls in love with her. He befriends the father of two of his fellow classmates and Bill Murray. And the movie then is about him competing with Bill Murray for the affections of this teacher, and how that, and then in turn, him going to war with Bill Murray over her, how that affects him. It gets him thrown out of school. He has to then restart at public school. How he, the lessons he learns, the punches he takes to the chin, and how he has to rebuild himself and become a better person by the end of this movie. It's a very nice arc. Because he's kind of a shit at the start of it. And by the end, he is humbled. He has learned a thing. He is a better friend to people. He is a better son to his father. And he learns that that burning everything around you so that you can bang this woman twice your age is probably not the best use of your time. But I have to say, and I don't want to talk, I'm underselling the movie. I loved Rushmore. I don't like it as much as I like the Royal Tenenbaums. That's my favorite of these three. But I very much thought this was, how long is this? This is a 90-minute movie. It is just the right length. It is perfect. A very identifiable 3-act structure. A very identifiable, cozy, warm, inviting character arc for our lead. Our lead is just the right amount of douchebag, but also sympathetic, so that you are like, I don't like you the way you are now, but if you change, I will like you, and that's what you want. In your lead,
he's not malicious.
No,
he's just obliviously, disastrously self-involved.
Yeah, he's very entitled and sort of, and as you put it, self-involved. And he kind of has to learn to remember that there are other people in the room that are as important as he is. That's the lesson that he learns. I love this movie. I thought it was fantastic. There are a couple of times where Wes Anderson's more habits get in the way of what I think would be maybe a tighter narrative. But it's early on in the Wes Anderson career, and he doesn't become Wes Anderson without this movie, so I'm willing to allow it. But also, that also might just be a personal thing with me. I needed to be a little snappier, or a little more let's get to it than maybe. Yeah, I mean, the fact that this is such a well-received movie, it's beloved. I'm gonna have to kind of put myself on pause and go, just because it bothers you doesn't make it bad. So, what did you think of Rushmore?
Loved it. Loved every single minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm deeply sorry that it took me this long to get around to it. I think it's ingenious the way he weaves the whole thing so that you can bounce from Max Fisher being absolutely detestable for about the first frame of the movie, about the entire first act to it, to by the end of it, you're genuinely rooting for him.
Yeah. You want him to learn his lesson and succeed and have friends and be loved.
Yeah.
Which is nice because I feel like that's a missing element of a lot of movies now.
Yeah. And again, and when you think about it, he doesn't really care for hurting anyone for the sake of hurting anyone. It's just that he knows that that's the shortest route to getting what he wants. And I think at some corner of his brain, he even thinks that everyone else will be better off if he just gets what he wants.
Yeah, you use the term, he's not malicious. No, he is not.
No.
He did not wake up in the morning and go, I will hurt the following people today. However, what makes him kind of
his bullies.
Yeah, what makes him kind of a shit, though, is that he's not thinking at all about the other people in the room. Whether they are helping him in his goal or in the way of his goal, he's not interested in what they need or what they want. He's just interested in the goal. And however he needs to get there is all those people mean to him. And what he figures out by the end of the movie is that is not the way to run a railroad. That is not the way to treat people.
The aquarium versus the baseball diamond.
Right.
That's the best example I can give.
Yeah, I want this aquarium, but not at the cost of something that is beloved to other people. That's not fair. Find a way to compromise.
Yeah, he's ready to put up this whole ass multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art aquarium on campus so that he can win over this teacher's affections.
Mm-hmm.
But he cares nothing for the fact that to do it, he's going to have to completely bulldoze the coach's baseball diamond. Right. And he's also very proud of and fond of and would like to still exist.
and it's what a romantic notion, because I'm not really a romance guy. Any women that I'm with will tell you that. So but I can appreciate the grand gesture. And what a grand gesture it is that, like, you have this modest interest in aquatic life. Let me go ahead and build you an aquarium so you'll like me. Which, let's just take a moment to examine that phrase I just used. Let me do a grand thing so that you'll notice and like me. As boys, Sean, as boys who have had varying degrees of success in the field of romance, what a thing to relate to. You know, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be appreciated, to be valued, and to feel like you have to move heaven and earth. You have to slay dragons and win medals and build monuments so that the pretty girl will recognize you're in the fucking room. And then she doesn't. And then she rejects you anyway. What a tale.
It happens. You don't think it'd be like that, but it do.
Facts can confirm. So that is another thing about this movie, is that while you may not relate to the hoity, you will relate to his personal journey. And I think, again, as boys, we relate to that, having an object of your affection reject you, and like, soundly so. Like, she's twice his age. He's a 15-year-old boy. She's an adult woman. Like, this can't happen. even outside of Florida, and Florida seems to happen with alarming regularity. But but in the rest of the known universe, an adult woman should not be trying to bet a 15-year-old boy. And and she's trying to tell him that, and like you were saying before, in his mind, he's just like, but why? Like this, I love you, and that should be enough. The rules of the world don't apply here.
When you really think about the generation you and I grow up in, though, we were kind of none too subtly conditioned from the first pop out of the coochie that we are equipped to be the ones in charge, to have our demands be always paramount. It's just kind of always implied, or sometimes straight on the nose, sometimes with a little more subtlety, but it's always there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thousands of years of patriarchy tends to have an effect on your upbringing. And here we are. But I don't know how much you have to say about Rushmore. Like I said, I liked his personal journey. I liked, like I said, I don't necessarily always appreciate a good romance story, but this one I really enjoyed. I think Bill Murray is. So Bill Murray's one of the things I was reading about Rushmore is that this gave him sort of a second life as an independent film star. And I think back to like his SNL years, and I think back to his early 80s comedies and like Ghostbusters, where, Bill Murray sort of plays a sardonic, sarcastic,
very
droll. Yeah. And then here, like, I don't know if you ever saw, the one where he's in Japan.
Lost in Translation.
Yeah, Lost in Translation, where like Wes Anderson accidentally finds this brilliant way that Bill Murray acts, which is deadpan, where everything is sort of met without any kind of emotional reaction at all, and he's just sort of reciting lines, and somehow or other Bill Murray is one of the very, very few that can get away with it, and it's brilliant every time he does it, and it's all over his character here in Rushmore.
Yeah, I think if you retune that droll delivery of his very, very slightly, you have something that lends so well to any character that has to be particularly detached, haunted, world weary, anything of that nature. And it works in both kind of more understated comedies like this and something with a little bit more of a dramatic backbone. Like Lost in Translation.
It's like somebody watched Ghostbusters and they were like, okay, so those scenes where you're singing, whoa, somebody's coming, or you're trying to play pinch and squeal with Sigourney Weaver, or anything else, it's like, that's all fun. But that one scene where you're in the elevator and you're trying to convince the one guy that you're exterminators with these giant atomic proton packs on your back, and he's just like, yeah, we're exterminators. Someone saw a cockroach on floor 15. Maybe some fucking cockroach. I'll bite your head off, man. And it was like somebody saw that scene and was like, what if that, but all the time? What if you're Harold Ramis, but in our movie and not Bill Murray in this movie? Can you do that? And like that's every single performance that I've seen him in with stuff that I've seen him do for Independence, where he's just like, you're so much. It's funny. I listened to Jason and I did an actor survey for Black History Month for Eddie Murphy. We looked at Trading Places, we looked at Harlem Nights, and we looked at Life. And one of the things I said about Eddie Murphy vis-a-vis Trading Places and Dan Aykroyd is that everybody just expects the funny out of Eddie Murphy. Go up there, get on camera, smile widely, do your funny. And Eddie Murphy is brilliant when you just let him give you the performance that the character deserves and needs and not be a minstrel. And I kind of feel the same way about Bill Murray, where it's like they saw him on SNL and they were like, can you just do that? Be funny. It's like, I have so much more to give that you don't even know. And if you would just let me be Bill Murray and let me be the professional, outstanding actor that I can be with the material you're giving me, you're going to see what makes Hollywood brilliant. when everybody doing their best gives their best at the same time and you capture it with the best equipment, magic happens and it makes life worth living. And that's Bill Murray for me in these movies.
Let me ask you something then.
Yes.
What do you think the difference maker is between a comedian being able to do that and become really pretty profoundly successful? Like you said, like Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, of course, versus someone like Jim Carrey, who abandons comedy for the longest time and ends up really being pretty frustrated by how his dramatic roles are perceived. What do you think the difference maker is between the two?
I think sometimes it's the projects that you take. I think the Truman Show was very well received, and I think it's a great example of Jim Carrey taking his comedic chops and applying them to a dramatic role and it being a big hit with people. I'm not entirely certain other stuff that Jim Carrey has taken resonated with people, whereas Bill Murray has done a lot of work with Wes Anderson, and that did. And look, not everything Bill Murray did hit it out of the park either. These are working actors who take a lot of projects. They're not, and they're like baseball players. A lot of swings at bat, a lot of games in a season. They're not all winners.
No, but base hits count for a lot.
Sure. Yep. And I would tell you, Bill Murray has racked up a lot of base hits, and I think Jim Carrey also took a lot of big swings. Like he's not as many at bats as Bill Murray, and then when he does, he's always swinging for the fences, and so he strikes out more than he hits. When he hits, he hits grand slam. When he hits, he hits it out of the park and nails the blimp. However, Bill Murray is just comfortable getting on base, and if he happens to hit a home run, he'll take it. But he's good to get on base, and he gets on base more often than not.
Bill Murray is Tony fucking Gwynn.
Yeah. Anything else about Rushmore?
No, not really. I think we pretty much covered Rushmore. I think everything left is just kind of right there in the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah. All right. So the Royal Tenenbaums is a 2001 American comedy drama directed by Wes Anderson and co-written by Owen Wilson. It stars Danny Glover, Gene Hackman, Angelica Houston, Bill Murray, Gwyneth Paltrow, Ben Stiller, Luke Wilson, and Owen Wilson, ostensibly based on the non-existent novel and told with a narrative influenced by the writing of J.D. Salinger. It follows the lives of three gifted siblings who experience great success in youth and even greater disappointment and failure in adulthood. The children's eccentric father, Royal Tenenbaum, who is Gene Hackman, leaves them in their adolescent years, return to them after they have grown, falsely claiming he has a terminal illness, stomach cancer. He works on reconciling with his children and his ex-wife. So, yeah, let me read a little bit more here. Written with a variety of influence, including Louis Mayall's 1963 film The Fire Within and Orson Welles' 1942 film The Magnificent Ambersons, the story involves themes of dysfunctional family, lost greatness, and redemption. An absurdist and ironic sense of humor pervades the film, which features a soundtrack subsequently released in 2 albums. The Royal Tenenbaums was shot in and around New York City, including a house in Harlem used for the Tenenbaum residence. The filmmakers went to efforts to distinguish the film's backgrounds from a recognizable New York, with fashions and sets combining the appearances of different time periods. After debuting at the New York Film Festival, the Royal Tenenbaums received positive reviews from critics and was Anderson's most financially successful film until The Grand Budapest Hotel in 2014. Hackman won a Golden Globe, and the screenwriters were nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. In 2016, it was included in BBC's 100 Greatest Films of the 21st Century. It had a budget of $21 million. It made $71 million. And like I said, it was nominated for all kinds of awards. It will take me forever to read through this list, but I will tell you that it won a Chicago Film Critics Award, a Costume Designers Award, a Golden Globe, a National Society of Film Critics Award, and it won an American Film Institute Award. So that's the Royal Tenenbaums. Basically, in like the plot summary said, it's established right at the beginning of the film that Gene Hackman's a cad and a dirtbag and not to be trusted. He's a lawyer, and he's cheating on his wife, and the wife throws him out. And so he lives at a hotel until he runs out of money. Apparently, he also does a stint in prison. The kids all have success early on in their youth, but then they get to be adults. You have Ben Stiller's character, whose wife dies in a plane crash, and he's like overprotective of his boys. You have, I believe it's Luke Wilson. who goes on to be a professional tennis player. But they have an adopted sister in Gwyneth Paltrow. And, don't let the fact that she's adopted stop them from being in love. And that love is what makes him fuck up a tennis match and end his career. Gwyneth Paltrow is a playwright in youth and then becomes an adult and just sort of scamps and sluts around for a while and eventually ends up with, in a loveless marriage with Bill Murray, which is where all marriages go to die.
Bill Murray?
Yes. That's where all love goes to die, in a loveless marriage with Bill Murray. And so Gene Hackman, having been tossed out of his hotel and made to confront his failures of life, decides that in his last lap around, he would like to reconcile with his family. And that's the whole fucking movie, is him trying to win these people back, but he's sort of a shitty person, and so he lies about the stomach cancer as a way of getting in with his family. And he's trying to do different, like he's trying to break up Angelica Houston and her engagement to Danny Glover by being just a bit racist. I took jive. I was like, oof, this is making me uncomfortable. And I'm me. So yeah, you ever just see like a rich white person who doesn't come across black? The only black people he ever comes across are successful black people, and he doesn't quite know how to deal with, every black person is actually a white person, just darker skinned. Like that mentality. It's like you don't know authentic blackness. And so he writes this dialogue for Gene Hackman, and it comes across more racist than it really is. Because it's coming from Wes Anderson, who I don't think has met an actual black person before, outside of Hollywood. Anyway, so
but Danny Glover is intelligent enough. I could see him looking at that, maybe understanding that, but still being like, this is frustrating, but I think I can work with this.
Yeah, I'm sure he kind of looked at that script, looked up, and went, "Well, at least this isn't having to deal with Mel Gibson for a fifth time." So.
I've always wondered if those two got along personally.
I can imagine Mel Gibson drove him up the wall, considering what Mel Gibson turned into.
Oh,
so,
he had. If he was like that when he was younger, he had to.
Yeah. Anyway,
every day on set had to be a restraining order waiting to happen.
So this, the Royal Tenenbaums is a really great story about redemption, about reconciliation, about looking back at a life poorly lived and going, I don't want to go out like that. I don't want the memory of me to be I was a shitty person. I want sometimes the lasting memory of a person is your last memory of that person. And so, it's a very Christian thing, very Catholic thing about like, I did all these bad things, but I will confess. And I will be given absolution, and then I can try to do better.
If you'll permit me just a brief little sprinkle of headcanon, it's real easy if you watch Rushmore first and then watch the Royal Tenenbaums to imagine that Royal is what Max would have been like if Max majorly backslid throughout his adult life, and then all of a sudden had to go through that same journey all over again.
Yeah, I can see that. The Royal Tenenbaums especially for a sort of meandering Wes Anderson film, is very tight. It clocks in at roughly just under 2 hours. It does not feel its length. It feels like it's moving at a very brisk pace. Gene Hackman carries this whole thing on his back. Like he has this much like Max. It's funny you say that, because now that you said it, I can't get away from that thought. Much like Max, he has a sort of oblivious dickishness about him, where he doesn't realize how bad he is, and he's kind of looking at himself going, "I don't understand. This makes sense to me." And God, I've been there. I've definitely been Gene Hackman, where you're just like, I don't understand what it is that I'm doing wrong. I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and everyone else is going, everything about what you are doing and who you are is upsetting. Please change.
You do get the sense that he's aware on a certain level that he's at least a little bit of a scoundrel.
I would say he's willing to listen to the explanation that what he did was bad. But he wanted to do it in the moment, and he definitely comes across like the kind of person who's like, well, if I wanted to do it, then I should do it, and wanting to do it and doing it is good. And then the rest of the world looking at him going, that's not how this works. That's how you end up alone, homeless, with no money and no family.
Well, what interests me about Hackman so much is you're not kidding. He really turns in the only true standout performance of the movie. And I'm not saying the other performances are bad. What I am saying is that
Gwyneth Paltrow does Vacant really well.
what I'm saying is there's a certain truth of Wes Anderson movies.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that while I don't believe any kind of acting is necessarily easy to do well,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that his dialogue and the cinematography in his movies, along with the soundtrack, the score, carries most of the load to where it's not hard to get a great performance out of his material. It helps if you have already superlative actors like Bill Murray, Danny Glover, Angelica Houston, all in those roles. It's just going to make it that much better, and especially Gene Hackman. Jason Schwartzman, of course, is Wes's muse. But the thing is, then you also have a movie where really unremarkable performances from the likes of Luke and Owen Wilson and Gwyneth Paltrow stand out just as much. Not because necessarily they're out there clearly really turning it up and giving their best, but just because it's like the work has magically already been done for them. They just kind of need to be there. Yeah. You'll notice the one person I didn't mention was Ben Stiller. And that's because I feel like this is one of those occasions when Ben demonstrates that we maybe don't give him as much credit as an actor as he deserves. Like, he's almost verging on that Nicolas Cage territory.
Yeah, Ben Stiller is yet another example of when you let an actor act, they'll give you brilliant performance. Ben Stiller, criminally underrated, because when you think of Ben Stiller, you think Zoolander, you think dodgeball. You know, you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. So Ben Stiller gets silly stuff like There's Something About Mary, and that's what people flock to. Those movies do well. So most people, when they think of Ben Stiller, they've seen him in the silly. You almost don't remember Ben Stiller's in the Royal Tenenbaums, and he gives the second best performance in the entire movie. And the tension between him and Gene Hackman is brilliant, because here is a man who just stubbornly will not forgive his father. And his father, looking back at his life, sort of taking the measure of the things he's done, and like knowing he owes Angelica Houston a huge apology. And he probably could have been nicer and not continually reminded Gwyneth Paltrow that she was adopted. And he doesn't seem to have a problem with how he treated Richie. But he looks back at like Ben Stiller and he's like, I wasn't that bad to you. Why are you being a dick to me? You know, it's like, and Ben Stiller's sort of looking at him going, you were the worst father ever. I would have been better off having no father. And I will, you know, and it's funny because I think Gene Hackman at one point says in the movie, like, you haven't gotten over the death of your wife. And your reaction to things is way beyond what is called for each individual thing. Like, I get it. I'm not great. I wasn't the best father, but you're way overreacting to how bad I actually was versus how you think I am. And that's because of all this other stuff you've got going on. The problem isn't me. It is, but not the way you think it is. The problem is you. And Gene Hackman just sort of like stubbornly kind of crossing his arms and like, I'll just stand here and wait for you to stop being a dick and forgive me, because at this point I've done everything I'm supposed to do. You need to meet me halfway. And God, have I been, boy, have I been there. You know, you're just staring at the other person who refuses to do the work that is a part of that's part of forgiveness. And you're like, okay, at this point, I can't do anything more. I can't do anything more to make up for what I've done. If you're not willing to meet me halfway, then this ends now. And it's great. It carries the movie.
I think I saw a quote on Facebook ages ago that was talking about how we have gone from Disney's idyllic fantasy being castles in clouds and happily ever after with royalty to being just our elders owning up to their bullshit.
Yeah.
Like that. That is the grand magical happy ending now.
Yep.
Is just our parents and grandparents just admitting, yeah, I screwed up. No excuses.
Yeah, I could have been better.
And just leaving it at that.
I could have been nicer. I could have treated you better. I could have been around more.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't perfect. I'm sorry. Like that's kind of all a lot of us are asking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It wouldn't even be settling.
Right. Angelica Houston and Gwyneth Paltrow. I would love to have a conversation with Wes Anderson and find out what woman hurt him and how loud and obnoxious she was. Because every woman in a Wes Anderson movie is a plank of fucking wood who speaks in a monotone.
Yeah. Yeah, they really didn't give Olivia Williams much to work with in Rushmore, did they?
They gave her the most of the of any of the women, like between Scarlett Johansson, Angelica Houston, and Gwyneth Paltrow of the women that stand out in any of these movies. They gave her the most in Rushmore, but like
I know, and that's saying something.
So I was thinking of the Addams Family movies with Angelica Houston and how great she is in those, and how it was like, oh my god, I get to play this character, whose name escapes me, but I get to play this character from Morticia Addams, you know, and really like vamp and or
the Wicked Stepmother in Ever After.
Oh my god, yeah. So Angelica Houston has so much more to give, and it's almost like I'm like angry at Wes Anderson for like don't cast Angelica Houston if you're not going to give her anything, or like there's understated and subtle, and then there's catatonic, and her and Gwyneth Paltrow, like Gwyneth Paltrow gets away with it because she gets some truly biting sarcastic lines in this, and so they're delivered deadpan and it works. Angelica Houston might as well have been a mannequin.
Yeah. Like how do you have Angelica Houston and Scarlett Johansson in your movies and you waste them to that extent? That's one of my only lingering frustrations with Wes.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't know.
Sometimes he doesn't know what he has in his women.
Well, I feel like there was some woman in his life that was just loud and obnoxious, like was always like, drunk or something. You know, like in my fantasy, women are quiet. It's like I can't have you doing things. I will be triggered and have a PTSD moment. Anything else about the Royal Tenenbaums?
Really not much, except for the fact that if you want to encapsulate everything that actually makes Wes Anderson movies enjoyable to watch, this is the one I would point people towards. We made the comparison between Wes and Woody Allen. This is his Annie Hall.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I do love the theme of reconciliation. It's big for me.
It's done so well.
Yeah, it really is. Like I said, this has the most solid story of the three, to where like from one scene to the next, things seem to flow in a way that Rushmore does it well too, but not as good. And in Asteroid City, it's like everything's going in every direction. The Royal Tenenbaums is very linear, very tight, very set towards this goal of we need to get Gene Hackman to the point where his family loves him again and then he can die. It's a very, in terms of like Christian redemption, it's a very Christian movie in that sense. Yeah. Which I also liked. Not because I'm particularly religious.
No, I was gonna say I had never really thought of it from a faith perspective before, but there's actually something to that. That's a good point.
Yeah. All right. Having said that, I think we have reached the end of our journey here with Wes Anderson. I'm not unhappy we watched these movies. I'm glad because again, I go to enough functions with other people who talk movies, and this is the way I relate to people, music and movies. Because it's always an easy thing to walk into a party and go like, "What's your favorite movie?" Because everyone has one, and then the ones that don't, you walk away from because they're dumb. And it's like I'm gonna go over here now.
It's one of the reasons I love that question.
Yes, I don't know. I just like movies. Ugh, go away.
By the way, since I don't think I've ever stated it right up front, Wayne's World, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and then at the top two, it is always a too close to call tie between the Blues Brothers and the Shawshank Redemption.
many of those we've actually talked about on here, to one extent or another. All right. So with that said, the only thing I was going to say to sort of end the podcast with Wes Anderson is he's one of those people, and Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums were definitely two of those films where if I find the people at the party who are really into films, inevitably those are questions I get asked, like, have you seen Rushmore? Have you seen the Royal? The other one is The Big Lebowski, which I have also not seen. And it's almost like, oh my God, I can't believe you, like, how have you seen Run Lola Run? And you've seen Donnie Darko, but you've never seen Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums. And I'm like, because I don't have time for your white people bullshit. That's why. And they're like, okay. So
I can't make time for the white people when Omar coming.
I have no time for honkies. So, but when you and I connected again and started saying, hey, let's do some podcasts that are not time dependent in case we have to delay these, I was like, okay, you know what? This is an opportunity to look at a new movie that's out there. And now I have another one. I have another one for 2023 that I've reviewed come awards time that I don't have to. So it was like, I waited to the end of the year and I didn't do my homework. And now I have like 20 assignments to catch up. When Robert, Alexis, and I did our Best Picture, Damn You Hollywood, that was one of the things that happened was like we had reviewed and seen like more than half of them, but there were 3 or 4 that I hadn't seen. And I'm like quickly trying to get them done before that. So I was like, I gotta make time in a different way than I had been doing it to see some of these movies. And so that was the point. I wanted to review Asteroid City, and I also wanted an excuse to watch Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums, and now that I have. And I got to talk about it with my buddy Sean.
Hey. I get some quality time with my best bud, Mark.
Sean will be back in 2 weeks for a show that he fell asleep on me for the last time. We're gonna get back on that long road to ruin, and we're gonna look at the Men in Black trilogy. Sorry. Which I have to now rewatch again.
Sorry.
This past week, we just did one show. Jesse and I talked Black Mirror. Next week, we've got just one show again. Jesse and I will be talking The Deuce Season 1. As far as canned hams go, we've got The Everyone Loves a Bad Guy for Natural Disasters. And Metal Hammer of Doom Sundays, we've got Enslaved in Times. There'll be an unspoken issues for Sonic the Hedgehog as well, and I'm sure I will get around at some point to throwing up some more movies that don't suck and some that do. I am at Mark Radulich on Twitter and TikTok. A segment of this show that I decide is worth putting up will be up on TikTok momentarily. So check out. So if you don't have time for 2 hours and you just want to find the best 10 minutes of any show that I've done, check out my TikTok at Mark Radulich. Sean, show us where you pissed from.
Follow me on twitch.tv/ComerCodex. I stream a probably unhealthy amount of Overwatch there. And very soon as my PS5 gets back from going to Sony for emergency surgery, I plan to start my Mass Effect playthrough. One I've been looking forward to for years. So follow me there to get updates when I go live. I am no longer on Twitter at all. When you decide to start monetizing basic security features, no, we're done here. But I am on Instagram and Threads at the same handle, at Comer Codex.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us here on Triple Feature on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. He's Sean, you're not. I'm going to go do laundry. Be well, be safe, and behave.